and security. The Microsoft Security Podcast. Talking security.
So welcome back to a brand new episode of the Talking Security. Let's talk. And I'm here with my good friend, Pouyan. Welcome.
Thank you, Frans.
And today we have someone very special joining us. Someone who has been part of the Microsoft Sentinel story since day zero, Pouyan.
Yeah, definitely. Today we are sitting down with someone we all know for many years. It's been a public face when it comes to Microsoft Sentinel from day one. We have also closely worked together when it came to Sentinel, building the first automation, the first DevOps approaches, which I think laid the foundation what at the end became detection as code terminology as well. He's one of the key people behind the evolution of Sentinel, if you ask us. So we are very happy to welcome Javier Soriano, Principal Product Manager for Microsoft Sentinel.
And Javier, for those who don't know you, who are you and what are you doing actually within Microsoft?
Perfect. Hello, guys. Frans, Pouyan, thank you for having me. So, yeah, Javier Soriano here. I'm based in Madrid, Spain. My role at Microsoft is Principal PM in the Microsoft Sentinel engineering team, specifically in a team that we call CXC, which is Customer Experience Engineering. So basically, we work with customers worldwide, enterprise customers, smaller customers, to just make sure that they adopt Sentinel in the best way possible. We provide them recommendations on how to implement it, to design it, and so on. And then we gather feedback from those customers to make sure that we include that in the product. We try with them things like private previews, and we have close engagements and design partnerships with them to help us shape the future of Sentinel. So that's pretty much myself. I've been in this role for, I think, 5-6 years now. Yeah.
And to dive in a little bit on that topic, for the listeners who may not know you that kind of, how did your journey into cloud and security started, and what eventually pulled you into the Microsoft Sentinel world?
So long time ago. So I've been in the IT industry for about 20 years, I believe. Yeah, 21 years. So I started at IBM, just doing like project management work with IBM. I moved to HP. So in HP, I was doing more like a bit of programming, Java, databases, things like that. But that didn't last long. I was there only for 6 months. And I joined a company that some of you in the audience might know, which is EMC, EMC Square. So EMC, company of storage, backup products, disaster recovery, and stuff like that. So I joined that company, I think it was 2007, I think. Yeah, 2007. And I stayed in that company for 10 years. During that tenure in at EMC, I moved to the US, actually, to the headquarters of EMC, which were in Massachusetts. So I lived there for 3 years. I was moving, obviously, towards the cloud in some of the work that I was doing at EMC. Like we started to do converged infrastructure, infrastructure as a service, and things like that. Also did a little bit of OpenStack in my old days, so a bit of that too. And then, not sure if you know, but EMC was acquired by Dell, right? Dell, the computer, the laptop making company. That was back, I think, in 2014, no, 2010 or 2009, something like that.
Long time ago.
Long time ago. So no, actually, no, it was 2016, I think. 2016, I think it was. Yeah, 2016. So Dell bought EMC. I didn't like the strategy on how the company was going. Like they were trying to do different things, changing a bit the philosophy of EMC. So that's when I joined Microsoft in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. I joined Microsoft as a cloud solutions architect, focused on enabling partners, the partner ecosystem, across all West Europe. So West Europe is a region within Microsoft, or it was a region within Microsoft, with the main countries in Western Europe, right? Like Spain, France, Portugal, and so on. So I was just making sure that partners in that region were aware of our technology. I was covering quite a lot of ground there. Like it was from Azure IaaS to Azure App Services, Azure SQL, and so on. And one of the main areas that I focused on was Defender for Cloud. At that time was Azure Security Center, as well as at that time Azure Security Insights or Azure Sentinel, right?
Mhm.
So that's when I started doing a lot of Azure Sentinel. The product was about to go GA, so there was a lot of excitement from the partner community on Sentinel. So I started working on that a lot, creating artifacts, blog posts, and so on. And then the opportunity to join this Sentinel engineering team came in 2020, I think it was. So then I joined this engineering team within CXC, Customer Experience Engineering, where I've been focusing on Microsoft Sentinel since then.
That's a huge journey, Javier. And as you also mentioned yourself, you have been involved with Sentinel as long as I can remember, day zero, let's say. Looking back, what was the original vision for to build the first cloud SIEM? Because I believe Microsoft was the first one. And what from that aspect triggered you to joining and being one of the main pulling people for Microsoft Sentinel?
Yeah, I think like in what happens in many situations that you're not really sure what you're building, and you're not sure about what's gonna be in the future. It comes sometimes as a an experiment, right? So we had in Azure Log Analytics, which is the solution that we have to collect logs from the wider Azure ecosystem. And then we said, hey, look, we have solutions for SQL, we have solutions for monitoring virtual machines, and so on. Why don't we build one solution specific to security, right? And that was Security Insights. And as you know, it's a module or a solution on top of the log analytics workspace, right? So that's
Yeah.
how it started. I think that the uniqueness of Sentinel was the elasticity and flexibility that the cloud gives you, right? Setting up your Sentinel environment in 1 minute or less, that was magic, right, for customers. Being able to just click a button to onboard data sources was also magic, right? So that created a lot of excitement. Again, you can run a POC in Sentinel in 5 minutes, right? And you get everything up and going just in that time frame, compared to other classic vendors like Splunk, Curator, and others,
Yeah.
which is a huge project, right? To have a deployment of that specific vendor. And the thing is that doesn't matter if your deployment is 1 gigabyte or 1 terabyte or 1 petabyte, is the same setup, right? Microsoft manages the scalability of the backend to be able to support whatever scale the customer has, right? So that's one of the great things. The other great thing is that we've been always, since the beginning, very open platform. What I mean by that is that we have been accepting contributions from the community on many different spaces, right? And you know this very well, Pouyan. Like you can write your own playbooks, you can write your own Jupyter notebooks, you can write your own API scripts or tools to do whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
So you can create your own hunting queries, you can create your own connectors, right? So all of these things are very well accepted by the community because they see the value that they can provide, right? MSSPs, for example, right? Security providers, they can build their own intellectual property and intelligence on top of what Sentinel provides with very easy plug-in technology, right? So I think that's what makes Sentinel successful, or what made Sentinel successful from the beginning.
I'm talking about working together and looking at today's landscape. Did you imagine back in the days when you started that concepts like detection as code, what we're talking about in a few in the last few seconds, would that become standard practice? Was that something you imagined at that point in time?
We didn't know what we were doing, Frans, to be honest. Like I
That
just
was
listened.
clearly feasible in the product, though.
I just listened to what the partners asked me, right? At that point, again, I was, as I said, talking to many partners about it, and they told me, why should I be able to just publish things? Like they were just used to infrastructure as code from the Azure world, right? Like we already started to see virtual machines as code, SQL servers, virtual networks as code. So the guys that I was talking to, who were from those partners, they said, "Can I do the same in Sentinel?" And we thought, why not? It's just another Azure service. It has APIs, so why not, right? You can basically define those detection rules. You can define them as an ARM template, the same way you define a virtual machine. You can define also an analytic rule and a connector and a hunting query and a workbook and a playbook, right? So all those things can be defined as an ARM template because they're Azure citizens, right?
Yeah.
So then we started developing that concept, and I just, as you probably know, right, I built a prototype, a very basic prototype, right? Just PowerShell scripts that would deploy that content that you have in a GitHub repo or in your Azure DevOps repo, and
Mhm.
yes, via pipelines, deploy that into your Sentinel environment or environments, right? And that grew a lot, and Pouyan made great contributions and improved solutions. And of course, now it's something that pretty much every MSSP has, right? And many customers as well have adopted, right? Now we have, not sure if you guys know, but or the audience knows, but we have a repositories feature within Sentinel, which for customers that don't have expertise with that, they can just have a repo where they have their things and they click a button or a couple of buttons in the Sentinel portal, and automatically they have a connection that goes from that GitHub repo into the Sentinel workspace. So that's kind of the evolution that we've seen on that front.
Yeah. And focusing on the evaluation, RVA, I mean, once Sentinel started as a cloud native SIEM, and we have seen it growing and growing on an exponential level, right? When it came to entities, when it came to the automation side, when it came to all the data tables, where we will be also talking about. But if you look where it is now, right? Integration with Defender for XDR, the whole unified SOC. What is, in your opinion, the biggest transformation that Sentinel went through for the last years?
Oof, tough question. I would say that the Defender portal unification, right? That for sure has been important, super important, transformative. Is the right strategic decision for our customers, right? For those of you that have been working with Sentinel for a while, you probably know the complications that we had with Defender XDR. We had to synchronize the data. We had to synchronize the incidents. That created a lot of also chaotic situations, right? So from a security operations center perspective, having all of those signals in the same place and all that data in the same place is the right choice, right? Is the right platform to be in, right? Avoiding changing portal interfaces, but not only portal, but also again the replication of data, the replication of objects, right? Artifacts that you have in that environment between two different places, right? So again, unifying in a single place, in a single platform, um, it was definitely the right thing to do. I'm not going to say it's easy, right? Or it was easy. They were two different products that grew in separate ways. So the integration, had some adjustments that need to be made in order to be successful. And as you know, there's still customers that didn't transition fully into the Defender portal. We have the deadline of July 2026 for those customers to migrate. And again, we encourage customers to continue bringing any specific situations where they cannot move or they have issues to move. Um, but again, the final picture is a place, is a portal, is a tool where you can have signals from your entire environment, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
endpoints coming from MDE or any other EDR tool, your identities, your email protection, your cloud app protection, your multi-cloud protection as well, and visibility to any other security tools that you might have in your environment, like network detection and response, like key vault management, and whatever it is. Everything can be centralized in that single place through the different Microsoft ecosystem tools. Again, keeping an open concept to other vendors as well, right? Again, you can have your own EDR that is not Microsoft. You can have your own CASB that is not Microsoft and still integrated within the environment.
Yeah, I must say what I really love from you guys as a team and Microsoft and Sentinel as a product is that, in my opinion, Sentinel was from day one, unification was the key, right? Single pane of glass where you can onboard all if it comes to automation because it had all kind of plugins. And even if it means that the product itself needs to go to a different portal, it means unification. Like the goal is still unification, having that SOC analyst, because we have seen it with customers where SOC analysts need to switch from portal to portal, and then you already see this is not going to work.
Yeah, that's something that we had back in the days.
Yeah,
Portals.
yeah. So
Hmm.
this is really
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
go
again,
ahead.
like the signals is not just the portal, right? It's just that having all those signals together in one place allows you to build much better things, right? Like, for example, we have now attack disruption, right? I think we announced yesterday at Ignite um, that we are expanding attack disruption to third party, right? You can have an attack disruption story with Okta, with AWS, with other third party kind of environments, right? So again, that is enabled because we have all those signals together in a single place that we can process, we can understand, we can view the impact, we can view the entities that are part of it, and then be able to act whenever is needed. So that's the magic of it, right?
Yeah, and as we are recording on the second day of Ignite, so there are a lot of announcements were going on during Ignite, also around security. So we don't touch all the updates. So, but there are a lot of new things coming into Sentinel as a product. A few months back, we met during the Workplace Ninja Summit. A few weeks before the Workplace Ninja Summit, Sentinel Data Lake was announced. So if we touch a little bit on the Sentinel Data Lake update, what is that actually? What is the core problem that Microsoft want to solve with introducing Sentinel Data Lake?
Hmm. So we launched in public preview, I think it was in July this year, 2025. So the core message is that when you have a SIEM, you have to have a trade-off between what you have visibility to and what you protect, right? So in theory, every company wants to have as much as possible visibility to the whole enterprise, right? If you want to protect a city and part of the city doesn't have the lights on, it's going to be much harder to protect that part of the city, right? So we want to have lights on in the whole city, right? That means bringing all that data into the SIEM, right? That cost comes with a cost, right? Obviously, there has to be a trade-off on, hey, do I ingest everything to have that full visibility, or there's some things that I'm going to leave in the dark, right? So we want to try to make that easy for customers. How? We introduced back then a new, very cost-effective tier, which is the data lake tier, that allows you for that massive scale of data ingestion across your whole enterprise, right? To be able to have that overall visibility across everything, right? In the world of in the previous story without data lake, that was not possible because of cost reasons, right? So that's the first thing that we announced, that data lake tier. It comes with a few other enhancements, like for example the ability to search that data lake interactively with no limits in terms of what you can query, how you can query it, the amount of look back that you can do. You can do as much as you want. 12 years is the limit, but you can look back at up to 12 years in the past. And a bunch of other things, right? Like the ability to rehydrate part of the data from the data lake into the analytics tier, so you can run detections on top of it and other things. And then it also came with two additional things, and probably we want to talk about that a bit later. But we announced also Sentinel Graph, which was announced September 30th, so just a couple of months ago, and also the Sentinel MCP server, right? So that was a fundamental architectural change. Together with that unification of the portals, this is the second biggest, or even the biggest transformation within Sentinel, right? The introduction of the what we call the Sentinel platform, which includes the data lake, the graph, and the Sentinel MCP server as well.
So before diving into Sentinel Graph and the MCP server, one question regarding data lake. To explain it a bit more, can you share some use cases where Sentinel Data Lake is going to make the difference for organizations? Is that only on cost? Is that, or has that other benefits as well?
Right. So, for example, just a classic use case. We have firewall logs. They're very noisy. They take up several terabytes per day or even more, right, in some organizations. And they have security value, yes, but the security value is not as much as with other type of logs like cloud audit trails or EDR logs and so on. So we want to have visibility to those, but without burning the whole budget. So for those types of logs, we recommend to send them directly to the data lake, right? And then being able to still extract the valuable bits from that data lake. I have customers doing one thing that is a very common scenario, which is I want to be able to detect if there's an indicator of compromise in those firewall logs that I have there, right? So that can be a KQL job. It's a KQL that executes on a schedule. We support hourly, weekly, monthly, and also by the minute scheduling. Can be as fast as every 5 minutes. So every, for example, 5-10 minutes, you can run a KQL job that is correlating those firewall logs with your TI tables, right? You have a table that contains all those IOCs. And then what will happen is that whenever there's a match, whenever the correlation sees something, an IOC that has been spotted in that firewall log, it will be promoted or rehydrated into the analytics tier to be able to raise an alert, right? So the SOC can see an alert for that event and be able to investigate accordingly. They will be able to go back to the firewall logs in the data lake because again they are queryable in an interactive way to see what exactly happened, what was the flow of the specific event, and so on and so forth. So that's one classic situation. Another one that it's also common, long-term threat hunting, right? So imagine that tomorrow they announce a new CVE, a new specific vulnerability, let's say Log4j, right, that is impacting the industry. And I want to see how I am impacted or how I was impacted or since when I was impacted, right? And I will be able to run that threat hunting very quickly, very easily, using full query capabilities of what was there 6 months ago, for example, right? So I can go 6 months back, be able to search for the IOCs or for the specific attack vectors that were utilized for that specific vulnerability. I can search for that in my long-term logs to be able to find that behavior.
Yeah, maybe good to also mention what when it came to long retention, what problem did we actually solve? Because how did customers needed to do this before moving to data lake?
Right. So before moving to data lake, we have a solution. We had a solution called Archive, right? Also called Azure Monitor Long-Term Retention. I think we changed the name a couple of times there, but it was basically the Archive tier, right?
Yeah.
The Archive tier, it was nice. It was very low cost, which is, of course, what we're looking for long-term retention, but it was very difficult to query. So in order for you to query, you didn't have interactive access, and you had to use what we call a search job. And when you use a search job, you had a very limited set of KQL queries that you could do. And you could only set a search on one table at a time, right?
Yeah.
So that was very limited, right? Many customers implemented it, but not many customers used it because again, when you try to access that data, you couldn't do things that are very simple, like for example, joining a table, right? Or summarizing a table. You couldn't. That KQL was not supported as part of the search job interface. So now with the data lake, those limitations have been removed, right? Which is quite important. Another important thing that besides the way to search the data and again, how interactive it is and so on, the other important thing that is changed with the data lake is that now we charge the storage capacity that you have in the data lake, in that long-term retention, we charge it on compressed data. So before, if you had 600 gigabytes of data in your archive, you paid for 600 gigabytes of data. Now, we are assuming, or we are putting a 6-to-1 compression ratio across the board, across all customers, across all tables. So again, if I have 600 gigabytes of data that I have to pay for in my data lake storage, I would only pay for 100 gigabytes because again, we're doing that 6-to-1 compression ratio. So basically you divide the amount of gigabytes that you pay for, the amount of terabytes, by 6. So quite an important difference from a cost perspective also for customers.
Yeah.
And I think I see in the app groups that we are in that there's a lot of buzz around data lake. So it's really solving a problem for consultants like us implementing this at customers, but also for MSPs and for customers are actually using data lake. So good message that we see that in the field there. Everyone is coming back with a message on that. So probably it solves an issue on the customer side.
For sure, for sure.
And what I think also is important is that because we are going to also talk about Microsoft Sentinel Graph and MCP, that data lake is the foundation layer, right, for Sentinel to evolving to more big data, AI ready solution for this. So when it comes to Sentinel Graph, it was a huge announcement. I think that the teams has been working behind the scenes for a while to get it live. How would you describe it to someone who's working on a security operations center and wants to understand why graph context actually matters and how they should maybe use it in a day-to-day investigation?
Yeah. So I'm going to use a quote from John Lambert, which is Microsoft Security Research CVP, Corporate Vice President. And he said, attackers think in graphs,
Yep.
defenders think in lists. As long as this is true, attackers win, right? So at the end, when you see an attack in your organization, you see that it started with an email, it then went to an identity, it went to a device, it went to a cloud application, then maybe went to a storage infrastructure where you had your important documents and they get exfiltrated, stolen, encrypted, whatever, right? So again, the attack goes to the different kind of environments or workloads within your company to do the most damage, right? And again, if you have separate silos for each of those different workloads, you have a problem because you don't have that cross visibility within the environment. This the graph capability that we are building within Sentinel, it's trying to close that gap, right? Allowing you to see your environment in a graphical way, seeing the connections between the different entities. And we have, again, entities of all kind, right? We have things like, of course, Azure resources, Entra users, Entra groups, and service principals, and so on and so forth, containers, whatever it is, cloud applications. So all of those become entities in that graph, right? And then you can search in a graph way instead of searching with KQL, which is great, of course, and very powerful. But we want to be able to, for example, say, hey, tell me what is the connection between these two entities, between this user and this storage account, right? And I'll be able to understand if there's a connection, and if there is, what is it, right? Is there a specific role that is assigned to that user that gives direct access to the resource group? Or there's a two hubs connection, right? There's a hub that would go into a machine, to a virtual machine, and then that virtual machine has access directly to the storage account. So what is the kind of connection between the different things? As part of the experience that we launched recently for Graph is one thing that we call blast radius, right? So on a user, in the incident graph, you can basically expand on the, just doing right click on the entity, you can expand to a blast radius graph. That means that I can see, hey, if this entity were to be compromised, what would be the other parts of my environment that would be affected or that would be exposed, right? So again, giving that visibility that is pre-breach and post-breach as well, it's very powerful for the analyst, seeing the connections between the different entities.
Yeah, I think we have talked with Matthias a lot about this. Matthias would fully agree with this because I know we know Matthias and he only thinks in graph. So with the quote that, and is it also correct if I say that when it comes to the data lake, they're having more data available gives us more the possibility to have more visibility as well. And but when it comes to connecting the dots.
Absolutely, absolutely. So today the things that we are uh, using to build a graph are several, right? I mentioned Azure resources. I mentioned Entra resources. We're also bringing Microsoft 365 resources, right? So the more and more we grow, we will be adding more capabilities to also have third-party graphs, right? So actually at Ignite yesterday, we announced what we call custom graphs. Right now, the experience is based on a Jupyter notebook with Spark, so not for everyone. It has a little of a technical adoption barrier in that sense, but we're working on making it easier or more democratizing it more. But it's available for folks. Like folks can now build their own third-party graphs, custom graphs that they want, right? Using the data that they have in the Sentinel Data Lake environment, right? So again, that's kind of the vision or the strategy that we're going with, allowing customers and partners to build their own graph experiences with any data that they might have.
And we talked about Sentinel Data Lake, Sentinel Graph, that makes it a bit more complete. But what about the MCP, the Model Context Protocol? What does that add to Sentinel Graph, Sentinel Data Lake? So everyone is talking about AI and workflows and whatever. So if you need to explain Model Context Protocol to someone hearing the term for the first time, what would you say?
Something I think I heard somewhere, but to me, it's like an API for AI, basically. So in an API, you have endpoints to be able to operate with certain things, right? Imagine that we want an agent to use that API. The way that you expose that API to an agent, to an agentic artificial intelligence, is through an MCP server, right? The MCP server basically will translate for that AI what the different endpoints can do. So the agent can interact with them, execute calls to those API endpoints automatically, right? Based on the specific description, right? So what we do is that we provide a description to the AI on what each endpoint will do. And then the AI is able to understand, hey, look, if I do a query against this endpoint, it will give me this, which will help me solve a bigger problem, right? So that's basically what the Sentinel MCP server is doing. So it honestly is spectacular seeing it working. So you can first of all select whatever model you want to work with. It can be GPT, it can be Gemini, it can be Claude, whatever it is. And then what it does is basically you ask a question to the MCP server. You say, hey, give me the users that I have with the highest risk in the last 3 or 4 days or the last week, right? It will basically go into the data lake, identify what are the tables that best answer my question, the table or tables that best answer my question, and then start executing queries, right? It will start executing the queries to be able to extract the information from those tables and then give you, as a result, an analysis of what it has found, right? And again, one thing that it does that is also very cool is that sometimes there's a mismatch in the schema, right? Or the query that it performs is not optimized, right? It corrects itself. It's able to provide the right query, extract the right data, and then put all the intelligence on top of that data, right? Like, hey, you can ask for a table with a deviation analysis. You can ask for a geolocation analysis. You can ask for beaconing patterns. You can ask for whatever you want, and it will provide you that very drill down analysis. I even saw from a colleague of mine, he said, "Hey, let's try the model. Let's make the model. Give me a full entity analysis and make it an HTML or a PDF, right? And then you just have to provide a good prompt with the details that you want, and it will generate actually an HTML file that when you open it, it will show you in very pretty HTML, CSS, and so on, all the different details for that entity, like logins, exposure, risky signings, recommendations of things that you need to do to increase the security posture of that user, and so on. So pretty amazing, the things that you can do with the MCP server.
And I think the best is you can run it from your IDE, right? From Visual Studio
Yeah,
Code, for example.
Visual Studio
So
Code, yeah, and today that's the experience. Like you can
yeah,
also build it with Security Copilot. And
yep,
yesterday at Ignite, we announced support for AI Foundry, so you can now connect AI Foundry to the Sentinel MCP server, as well as Copilot Studio. So you
yeah,
can use now other tools, Copilot Studio, AI Foundry, Security Copilot, and in reality, any other machine learning or agentic building framework that supports a custom MCP server with OAuth 2 will be able to utilize the Sentinel MCP server.
yeah. Amazing uh, future to look forward on. I think when it comes to this, because this is all I think planning in towards the multiverse and agentic where we are heading. But with that said, if from your opinion, if we are looking ahead for 1 or 2 years, I know it's already difficult to look 1 year ahead, so let's go for 2 years. What do you think will be the biggest change in how security teams use Microsoft Sentinel? Will it be more automation, more AI, fully different operational model? Where are we heading in 2 years?
So for sure will become much more assisted by AI, right? So we already have a couple of examples of agents that are helping customers do their triage and their investigations easier. We have already launched the phishing triage agent from Security Copilot, which I have customers using it, and it's already saving them a lot of time in just the analysis of phishing emails and
Ooh,
doing the classification for them, right? So
yeah,
they don't have to spend the time, analyzing each individual email. The agent will do it for them, provide an output that you can review if you want, and only give back to you the ones that are more important, the ones that it has identified as true positives or suspicious, right? At least. So imagine that applied to many more scenarios, not only phishing triage emails, but also many others like generic alerts, right? Hey, uh, give me or provide me an initial estimation or classification of the alert, so I just focus on the ones that are really important, right? Reduce or remove all the noise from my environment, so I just focus on what is needed, and then a much more interactive or what they call now the vibe investigation or vibe hunting, right? Interacting with the agent back and forth to get more details. Like, hey, I'm investigating this atypical travel kind of incident. Give me more information about this. Provide me more information about the user. Give me a breakdown of the logins that it did in the last 24 hours. Suggest me what are the next steps in terms of remediation, right? It will be able to suggest you what are the things that I should do. Like you will never be alone again, right? It will be able to understand what are the typical scenarios that you're working with, what are the typical remediation actions that are taken as part of such incidents, and give you that assurance that it's learning from all your different incidents that have been happening in the past, and provide you that assistance. So I think that's the future, a more collaborative approach to triage, to investigate, to resolution that combines human and artificial intelligence.
Uh, that looks good, I think. So, if I'm new and I want to start experimenting with Sentinel Data Lake, the Graph, and MCP, um, and this is thinking the last tough question before we have a fun one before closing out. Um, if I want to start experimenting with the data lake, graph, MCP, where should they begin? Where should I begin? Any advice for security teams just entering the next generation of cloud security?
Yeah, so for me, it's very easy, right? So your workspace can be created in just a few seconds, as you know. Connect it to your Defender portal. Doesn't matter if you are in E5 or in 3 or you are not a Microsoft customer, doesn't matter. You will be able to access it through the Defender portal. And then onboard the data lake. As I said before, onboarding the data lake will save you a lot of costs and will provide you these capabilities that I mentioned. What are the low-hanging fruits in terms of Sentinel? Ingest things like Entra ID logs, right? If you have Entra That's going to bring you a wealth of intelligence about your signings, about your actions in Entra, about your service principal activity, and many more things, right? So getting those logs into Sentinel is very easy. First of all, just checking a couple of boxes, and you have your data flowing into the workspace, and then it will provide you a lot of value. We will provide you things like UEBA, user identity behavior analytics, that are built in with that, and then the data will be automatically replicated to the data lake at no additional cost, where you can just play a bit with the MCP server. For example, you can say, hey, give me the risky signings, or give me the anomalous operations in the last few hours or days, right? And you will start experimenting what it's like to have the AI helping you analyze, helping you go through all the data, and so on and so forth. So I think that's low-hanging fruit. Of course, if you have an Azure environment, then bringing more Azure data will also be super helpful and enrich a lot more the experience. With that, you will be able to start exploring some scenarios like the graph part together. Entra plus Azure will already give you a good graph to play with and to explore. So those, I would say, would be the first things to do.
So no excuse, just start today.
Yeah, pretty much. And by the way, I think we have the free trial, which is 10 gigabytes per day for free. I believe it's for the first 31 days, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Something like that. Do you still have that all-in-one run project?
It's still there, and it still works.
It
Honestly, like
still
you
works.
can,
Amazing.
yeah,
So
it still
it's
works. You
not
can
there.
yeah. So basically, Sentinel in one, for those that you don't know, deploys your. It's just a wizard that allows you to deploy your workspace, select if you want a commitment tier or not, allows you to install our Content Hub solutions, which is our marketplace for a series of solutions, enable data connectors, enable analytic rules if you want. So it really eases up the first deployment and configuration of your Sentinel environment. It still works. Doesn't integrate with the Defender portal by default. You have to do that integration manually,
Yep.
but it's there. And it still doesn't do data lake, but stay tuned.
Fine. Fine. Javier, looking at the time as well, our listeners, and we are always used to end the show with a fun question. So for you, we have today the following question. If Microsoft ever created a Sentinel assistant mascot for events and keynotes, what would it look like, and what special superpower would it have? Would it blast KQL queries from its eyes, teleport through the data lake, or maybe auto-fix misconfigurations with a dramatic finger snap?
So I'm torn. I'm not sure. So I think the animal, my favorite animal would be a hawk, right, or a falcon. Would be the animal that it will be representing Sentinel. But then it needs to be also something that swims in the data lake, right? So it would be maybe, yeah, a hawk that is able to actually hunt in the data lake. So grabbing fish from the data lake, spotting the bad guys or the enemies from that environment.
I really like that one. So thanks for joining us today in this episode of Let's Talk. There was an amazing deep dive into Sentinel, where it came from, where it's now, a bit of a future from your perspective. So thanks for joining us, Javier.
Of course, my pleasure, guys. It was super fun, and looking forward to have more customers join the data lake and Sentinel.
Let's do that. So we will back soon with more episodes, more insights, and more great conversations. Thanks for listening in, and let us know what you want to hear next.
Yes, and for today, thanks for listening. Stay safe, stay curious, and keep talking security.
Talking security. The Microsoft